All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back, Former Farm Kid channel. The first thing I want to talk about is the Yaris. Thanks for all the comments. This video got more comments than I have gotten on anything else. A lot of really good information. I think most guys are in agreement that changing transmission fluid is a good idea. Most folks were between the 15 to 30,000 range with the filter and cleaning the magnets. And most agree that yes, you don't get all the fluid changed, but if you keep doing it on that schedule, eventually you are going to get the majority of the old oil out. And lastly, that flushing is probably not a good idea because of stirring up the sediment, plugging ports, those type of things. So thanks for that information. Today is Tacoma Day, and what I've got here is a 2016 SR5. It's been really a good truck. This truck has had 2 recalls. Believe it or not, they're replacing the frames on these for excessive rust. And when you go in and they inspect it, if you don't have a lot of rust, what they do is undercoat it, and what it does, instead of coming back every 2 years to check it, they go on a different time frame. I think I'm up to 3 years now since my last recall, but I keep bringing it in because they keep track of it. And if you ever decide to sell it, you know, you got to be able to tell the buyer that you're up to date on all the recalls. It also had a recall on the rear differential, that it was leaking and folks weren't noticing and blowing out their rear end. So, you know, again, I think what they're doing is checking the torque. Judging by the rust that I have on those bolt heads, that they're checking the torque on the cover plate to make sure that it is not leaking oil. And of course, I'm sure they're checking the oil level as well. The rear differential, this is what we're doing today. We're doing both differentials, front and rear. The rear is the easiest. So, you know, I've saved that for last. The drain plug is there on the bottom. There's the fill plug right there. You just fill it into that plug until it gets full. And thankfully, it's got a hex head on it. Not so true with the front differential. So let's go talk about that. The rear differential takes just a little over 3 quarts. The front differential takes 1.6, I believe. And that's about what it turned out to be. So here is underneath the front of the truck. And I am pretty much on the right side. Here is the drive axles. This is going to be kind of tough filming here, guys, on this. This is the front differential. This is, let me get around here. This is the drain plug. This is the fill plug. That one right there. And as you can see, they do not have male hex fittings, they have female. So you need basically one of these things, 10 millimeters. Well, guess what? These are all SAE. None of them fit. So unfortunately, my backup plan was regular hex keys. And thankfully, this one has a 10 millimeter. This big one's sticking out here. Well, that sounds all good and dandy, but let me rework here a little bit. And by the way, do not try to use a 3/8 hex It seems like it fits. It doesn't. It's about a 0.5 millimeter too small. And if you're taking these plugs out for the first time, let me tell you, I don't know who does all the torquing for Toyota, but they always seem to go a little nuts. And these plugs have never really been in salt, and getting them off was a bit of a challenge. That's why I highly recommend these things on a straight arm. You got no problem whatsoever then. You don't even need an extension. These are ideal. Again, I didn't have that, so plan B, maybe even plan C, not the greatest plan in the world, was to use this thing. Well, here's the drawback. You cannot get this loose by turning on this handle here. There's just too much give, and you just end up twisting it, basically. It would not come. So what I ended up doing was getting my handy dandy vice grips and clamping it onto here. You want to make sure you're in the most ideal position, which is all the way up and then clamped on nice and tight on a flat part of the hex key. So all the way up as far as you can get, so that hex key is down in this position here, nice and tight. Make sure you're not catching on the frame here, and then take a 5-pound, where am I at? Take a 5-pound hammer and tap right there. Try not to hit your adjustment here, but right on this part right here. And I did take a brass punch and I tapped up on the plug as well, just to give it a little shock like an impact would. And could you use an impact on this? Yeah, if you've got that fitting, without a doubt. You would probably need an extension, and you know what happens with impacts and extensions. Sometimes there's enough slop that they just don't work. So that's how you get that plug out. And then the top one basically is the same deal. The top one was actually tighter than this bottom one. But, you know, I did the same thing here. Can't do it left-handed. All the way in. You got to make sure you're all the way in. And then, alrighty, part 2 of the differential video. And before I get into that, a correction on the Yaris transmission. I made the statement that oil flows downwards through the filter into the pan, and 2 people corrected me on that. It appears that because the filter sits low in the pan and the pan is relatively full of oil, that oil is brought up through the bottom and exits through the top of the filter into the transmission. I've never seen one work like that, but evidently that's probably the norm. My thinking was that it operates much like a crankcase oil filter, where the oil is forced through it versus being drawn through it. So correction on that. Thanks for those comments. So I got interrupted yesterday. Didn't get a chance to film actually filling up the remainder of the front differential on the truck. Ran out. I thought I'd shut the camera off, but unfortunately it continued to video a conversation I had with my neighbor, so I had to finish it up. But I do have the rear yet to finish, and I'm going to show you that. All right, so the question becomes, on the truck, in that tight situation on that upper plug, how do you get the oil into it? Well, the best option is a hand pump. It's about $32 on Amazon. You can stick it into a quart container or a gallon or whatever. So if you do a lot of this work, you're on a farm, you probably have one already. That's probably the best option. Another option is this. I've had this for over 15 years. It screws onto the top of your quart container. At least it's supposed to. Get on there. Like that. You can turn it on and shut it off. So up is shut off when you want the oil to flow. You spin it down like that. This line, again, it's pretty old, but it's still pretty flexible. And you can literally force oil up by squeezing, if this is open, by squeezing this can. There's another way to do it that I had never seen until I went to get oil for the truck. And that is a bag of oil. And believe it or not, you can add this to this as well, because this has a plastic top to it with a baffle in this part of the bag that allows you to pump oil out of this at 90 degrees, believe it or not. And I did it on my truck because the nice thing about this bag, you can squeeze it into this little bitty area, and with that pointed at 90 degrees, you can still squeeze oil out of that. That baffle keeps a space open so the bag doesn't collapse on itself and pinch off the supply. And I tell you what, I pushed back on buying oil in a bag. The salesman kind of talked me into it, and beyond that, I really didn't have a choice because this manufacturer doesn't use plastic bottles any longer. They don't use bags. And my understanding is from talking to a salesperson, you can buy these in 5-gallon bags that come in boxes that I think have to remain in the box. When you can tap it, sort of like, I don't know, a syrup, whatever, and you can refill these. So I was really, really surprised. It worked very, very well. I'm going to actually set up and do, I hope, the last bag into my rear differential, and you can see exactly what I'm talking about. I will try to pump it in, even though I can get above the hole. I will try to pump some in with the spout at 90 degrees, and you can see it actually flow. It's a matter of pulling off this black top here and then snipping the top because it is sealed. There's no other way to turn. You don't turn this on or anything like that. So it's really turned out to be a pleasant surprise. So let's go ahead and get to work on the rear differential. And so, as always, safety first. It's not necessary really to put the truck up on a four-wheel drive. There's pretty good clearance underneath the truck, but you know, having said that, it certainly helps just getting in. Not so much being under, but just getting in under the truck. So safety first, solid blocking under the wheel. I like to just lift the whole axle instead of going up on jacks. I will sometimes put a jack under the frame just to give it another couple of inches, but the majority of the weight of the truck still remains on the axles. So 6x6 underneath, white oak for the ramp, and a 4x4 to go ahead and get it up into the air. But again, if you don't have all this stuff, you don't need it. You can still get underneath. Okay, so here we are underneath the truck. Hopefully the glare back here is not too bad. But here we see the fill plug. 21 millimeter socket works really well. A 3, 4, 5. What do we got here? 3, 4, 5, 6. A 6-point socket works really well, but these plugs don't come out too badly. This was the drain right here, It's supposed to take 2.9 quarts, I believe. And I think my manual is off a little bit because I'm at about 3.5 already. So I got another bag, and hopefully this will be the last bag I have to use. I think I got this just hand tight, yeah. And I guess I've got the truck pretty level. My driveway slopes back, but of course I've got it up in the air. So hopefully this is not going to, and I don't have a drain pan beneath me because this piece of plywood got pretty soaked. Not plywood, but cardboard. So I'm going to have to toss it. So if it drips out on this, it's not a big deal. So let's see what we got here. No, it's got a ways to go. So, and this plug is not magnetized. It's got nothing in the center. I guess they assume nothing's going to make it up to it. So it's perfectly clean. I haven't touched it. So that's that. And now for the new magic bag. You can see firsthand how it operates. And by the way, guys, I am not sponsored by anybody. I do not monetize my channel whatsoever. I have not and will not ever take a penny for any of my videos. I do it just to help guys that are trying to do what I do. And that's why I watch other guys, to learn from them so that I can pass it along. And so if it helps like one person to do their job a little bit better, then believe me, that's good enough. And by the way, here is all the gunk that came off the plug of my Yaris transmission. You can see how thick it is. Now, I just purposely did not use gas so I could get an idea of just how much was there. And that's about as gunky a plug as I have ever pulled, even from a tractor that hasn't been changed in years. So that's kind of a lesson learned. So I'm going to use the same rag for the overrun because you don't want to leave any drops on the axle, because you want to know if it's leaking or not. So I am going to go ahead and start pumping, and I'm going to do it at 90 degrees. Not that I need to. There's plenty of room above this, but I'm going to do it at 90. When you cut your stem off, you don't want to make it too short, but you don't want to make it too long, because then the hole is too small. So this is not real thick here, so that's far enough to get in, but still give me a good flow. So let's see how it does again at 90 degrees. So there's the end right there, and I'm just going to kind of get underneath it so I can see in case it fills up. And I'm just going to start squeezing the bottle. And how great are we flowing here? I'm going to try to get a look at it. And lo and behold, it is not flowing. So what's going on here? It's not flowing. Oh, duh. That needs to come off first. And did I do that on the other bags? Yeah, I did. I just totally forgot it had to be done. So let's see if I can get it off without getting the pliers, because I had to have a pliers to get this off. A lot of these are pretty old, and they're pretty stuck on there, like this one. So we're going to pause here a sec. Okay, to get that little flap off, these are pretty handy, because it just tears the tab and it gets left stuck on. If you got a real new bottle, it might not be an issue, but chances are this one, who knows how long it's been on the shelf. So let's try the 90 degree this time and see what happens. Oh yeah, you can tell right away. So there's 90 degrees. And as I start to, is it running out or is it, yep, there we go. So that was probably a waste of $20 to get a new bag, because that only took not even a quarter of a quart. Having the plug handy, screw that baby in. I am pretty level. The problem here yesterday, chances are, so that I can't see really where the oil is. Well, maybe a third of a quart it took. So, you know, what the heck. Third of a quart, still worth doing. Get all the oil off of this so none of it gets on the socket. Cleaned up so we know if we're leaking or not. You want a nice dry, not that it's ever going to slip, but you know how that goes. And you don't need to go nuts on these either. I'm just going to support it here. I'm just going to use one hand. A little bit of tension. Could you use a torque wrench? Yeah, probably a good idea. Okay, so then you can use the top to seal it back up. And is that as good as sealing a bottle? Probably not. One thing you do want to make sure is that you have this screwed back on tightly to here. They don't come real tight because obviously it had that membrane that had to be removed. And once you get that membrane out, screw this back down, otherwise it will start to leak. I still can't really see where the oil is on the bag. They don't really have a clear view through this, but I'm guessing it only took about a third of a quart. And again, my truck was uphill yesterday, and I started thinking about it last night. It would put this plug a little above the level, and this way, because my driveway slopes down and my ramps go up, the truck actually is level. So if I'd had this in this direction yesterday, I probably would not have had to go after another quart of oil and spend $20 on some gear oil that who knows when and if I'll ever be able to use it again. All right, guys, any comments, questions, please keep them coming. They're very informative, very educational for me. I appreciate it. There's always usually something that can be done better, not necessarily different, and I'm always looking for those. So thanks for watching. Give me a thumbs up if it was any good at all to you. God bless. Keep up the great work. Let's see what you're doing. All right. Thanks, guys.